everything that you'd been through over that, preceding 3 or 4 years, however long it was, you said it was mentally challenging for you. Some people could see that, you're in Serie A at 17 and now you're in the Danish second division. They might look at that as a significant step down. But for you, was this a fun a way to try and like fall back in love with football and just get some enjoyment again? It sounded like you were pretty drained by the whole experience, the professional experience in Europe, even though it might not be the highest level that you want to play at. Was this just a way to, get playing football again and get enjoyment back in your life and in your football?
Yeah. I mean, I understand why people would perceive it that way and see it. It's like logically, what I've learned being in football so long now is football isn't logical. 1+1 doesn't equal 2. There's a lot of things, and I think I'm not the only one that thinks this, that, in business or something, if you're the better man for the job, maybe you get the job. Or on the outside, if you think for football, he's a better player, so he should play. But there's so many other things that go into it behind the scenes. It is, and when you get caught up in it, it's very draining. And when you are training, and I think every player knows if they've trained well, if they've trained bad, if they've played well, played bad. And obviously it's competitive sport. When you know you're better than someone in that position or in a scenario that you think you're on form and you're not playing, very difficult to accept because the decision's not in your hands. It's maybe in the coach's hands or the club's hands, or there's a vested interest by the director. There's so many things that go on that the best players don't. And I always grew up thinking, this player is playing because he's the best. But being more involved with football now, I've seen it's not always the players that deserve to play or that are the best that end up playing. And that affected me mentally a lot, because I always heard people talk about football being pure and the beautiful game, but it's far from it. And that's the reality. And the quicker you accept it, the better you are. But I really struggled to accept it, really, really bad. And like you said, being in the national teams growing up, Udinese at 17, you don't expect to be sitting on the bench in Belgium second division. And I thought I was better than all the players, and I thought I earned the right to play. And you have to just accept there's things that go on behind closed doors that you can't really talk about. But like you said, I saw this as an opportunity I just wanted to play football. I was at the point where, I had played however many games in Belgium first division. I had played against Bruges and Anderlecht and Genk. And maybe if I waited a bit longer, because this was earlier in the transfer window, I would have had something, maybe perceived as a better club or in a better league. But I was at the point where I was like, I can't keep going through this cycle over and over again. I was at a really, really, really bad point mentally, and dangerous maybe. Didn't want to play football anymore. Was ready to stop. And then I thought about what my life would look like if I didn't play football. And obviously it's a challenge every day type of thing, still working on it, but it really affected me. But I saw this as an opportunity to I just want to play football, and whatever happens, happens. If I'm playing and I'm playing well, then maybe I'll see football for being a sport and the sport I love, not a business that I had seen the last couple of years. And the business side, it's a really ugly side. And you see different sides to people that you never would have thought. And it's not as straightforward and as pure as people think. And that really affected me.
I want to go back to something else Scott mentioned at the start when he was doing his little intro as well. The comments from Les Murray that he made when you were, I can't remember how old you would have been at the time, 13, 14, 15, saying that you were the best junior player that he's ever seen come through in Australia, which is from someone of Les Murray's standing in Australia, is a significant endorsement. How much pressure does that add to your shoulders as a young kid, and the expectations that you then have of yourself? But also, then how do you deal with then that expectation that everyone in Australia then has? Because we're kind of seeing that, we've seen that over the years various times, where a young kid will come through in Australia and he's hyped up as the next Harry Kewell or the next Mark Viduka, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So how much does that expectation impact you as a young player coming through?
I think a lot of most of the pressure was from me and my dad, more than anything. I was always confident. I always knew growing up that I was one of the better ones in Australia. But being young, like, being on, like Scott said earlier, like SBS or Channel 10 or Channel 9 in Australia, when you're 7, 8, 9, 10, it was nice to like tell your friends at school, but didn't really feel the pressure. Like, don't think anyone really feels pressure at that age. Like, I was just ready to play soccer at lunch with my friends and going to training after school and doing homework in the car. Like, I just saw it as I love the game and it was a hobby. And I just saw it as, yeah, I'm playing and I know I'm very good at it. And I know this is what I want to do. Didn't really feel the pressure until, like, I don't know if I ever felt the pressure from those comments itself, or from Les, or from whoever was like a supporter in Australia, or the expectations. I think I probably did it to myself. A lot of the stuff, like going to the under-17 World Cup with Australia and stuff like that. Like, I knew we had a tough group, but maybe I put too much pressure on myself and didn't perform the way I know I didn't perform the way I could have performed at that stage. But it wasn't like, oh, Les has said this about me, I need to perform. It was more like, I know I'm the youngest ever Australian to sign in one of the top 5 leagues. I need to show that I'm better than these guys back home. And that was probably the wrong mentality to have, rather than, listen, I'm part of the Aussie national team and I'm starting 11 and I've earned that right with my performances and I'll play. And I always felt like my performances playing for Australia were a little different than playing for my club. Not to say that I wasn't okay or good for Australia, but I always felt more comfortable playing for my club. And maybe it was the change of formation and system. A lot of it was probably up to me, like mentally thinking, listen, I know I'm kind of very well known in Australia and people expect a lot of me. And I know that Les has said this, and I know that there were talks about me with the Socceroos at one stage, even though being really young. And now I'm with the under 19s or the under 23s. I was with the under 23s when I was 18. So I was like, I was with Hrustic in the 23s. I was with Awa Mabil, and they're a couple years older than me. And so I always was like, oh, I know that I have the quality, but kind of maybe added it to myself. It was never really pressure from Les or the comments in Australia. I know I was very well thought of, but I didn't think of Les saying the comment. I knew he was a supporter, but I kind of didn't even really know that Les had said I was the best talent ever that he had seen for Australia. It was never something that crossed my mind, but I knew going back, every time I went back, that there was a lot of interest from reporters and stuff like that, but I didn't really feel the pressure, to be honest.